Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is our kickoff of what we plan to be a weekly analysis of a few top vulnerabilities that have come to light in the last week. This is the product of our Virsec Security Research Lab, and we're joined by Satya Gupta, Virsec's founder and CTO, who also manages our security lab. And we've started to publish weekly reports now of the top 5 or so vulnerabilities of the week that we've discovered. And we're looking for things that are significant, that we think are actionable, and we can also talk about how Virsec addresses each of these. So good morning, Satya. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Willie. Pleasure to be here.
Can you share a little bit about significant things you've seen, and feel free to share your screen if you want to show any of the examples?
Absolutely. So let me do that. Let me start by sharing my screen here. So as you know, what we do in this blog is that we put together a list of 5 vulnerabilities that have a far-reaching impact on popular servers and all, for instance. And as you can see here, the ones I picked for the week of October 5th are the Apache Tomcat AJP file read inclusion vulnerability. This is a big one, really. This is because, you know, Apache Tomcat is a very, very popular server, and it has a very high CVSS score. So in this particular case, we have a CVSS score of apparently, you know, on this vulnerability, that's what we have here. Essentially, the CVSS score is 9.8. It's super critical. And given the fact that there is a very high preponderance of this particular server, it makes it especially dangerous. And one of the things that you will see is that, you know, this particular, if I go deeper into this vulnerability, I find that it is attackable from the network, and it does not require any privilege escalation. So, you know, the attacker pretty much has can run amok once they exploit this this particular vulnerability. But the good news is that you know, with the VSP solution, we can detect this as an LFI capability. So VSP web solution will absolutely block this particular attack, and it will also deny the VSP host will also can be used to block this malicious processes that the attacker wants to be able to start.
Can I just ask Satya, maybe on any one of these, this looks like a lot of good information your team has put together. So it looks like you have and I know there are thousands of vulnerabilities in the National Vulnerability Database. So you're looking for, as you said, you're giving a little bit of an analysis. You're talking about the criticality and then how widespread it might be. Is that a good summary?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then any other ones that stand out that you think you know, people should be aware of?
Yes. So all the 5 vulnerabilities that I picked up here have very big footprint. You know, the next on my list is a Jenkins Server, which is used by a large number of software development teams to be able to build their products essentially. And so, what if the server that is used to build it is vulnerable itself? It's vulnerable to a CSRF vulnerability. So, you know, I can, as a user, I can exploit that, and I can inject bad code into the build system. Essentially, it's like building a backdoor into the product. So this, fortunately, this is also another vulnerability that we can stop with our VSP web capabilities, and you know, it'll prevent you know, backdoors from getting built into your own product lines and all.
So through Jenkins, this vulnerability could effectively, these backdoors could be built into code that people are creating?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay.
The third one that I picked here really is the SQL injection vulnerability on Joomla. And with this vulnerability, I could actually can inject arbitrary SQL statements, and I could ferret out data from the Joomla database. So, you know, Joomla, as you know, is a very popular PHP server. It's used for content management, and it's used by over 2 million websites to put up their own respective content. I could potentially, you know, if there's a backend database in there, it's an active site which has a lot of content. That content could be totally compromised. You know, this is the kind of thing that would result in a defacing of the application, essentially, of whatever website that the customer is trying to put up. And so this is also, thankfully, we have support for, in our VSP web, we have the ability to block these SQL injection attacks very deterministically. So, this is one of those cases where right now there is no exploit code available, but the earlier two did have exploit code available. So you could expect, attackers to be able to leverage that. But fortunately, this one so far at this moment of time does not have an active exploit. So, but I would urge people to go and upgrade and potentially use VSP to be able to stop these attacks in line.
So if there's no exploit available, it just means it hasn't been publicly written.
That's exactly
of course, right? The hackers may have something that they're using that we don't know about.
Absolutely. And just as a matter of fact, most of these exploits are verified by the NVD, the National Vulnerability, the US CERT team, and they know of exploits out there that they've used to verify. It's just not been released into the public. So somebody out there already knows about this. So we should not really take chances, play Russian roulette with this with this exploit. Okay, the next one that I've picked here is this is a remote code execution kind of an attack. It happens particularly on MS SQL Server, and this is a SQL Server that is used heavily in the ICS space. And even though this tool, the MyLittleAdmin tool, has been deprecated a while ago, but many ICS vendors end up using this capability, and this is very easily exploited. There is a publicly disclosed exploit available here, and you should fully expect that this will get exploited, and the in ICS space will be targeted here. This is a super high critical vulnerability. It's got a score of CVSS score of 9.8. So it's just you kind of if you happen to be using MyLittleAdmin to administer your SQL databases and all, this is something that you should be very cognizant of and upgrade as soon as possible. And fortunately, we have VSP support for that. So if customers would like to deploy our VSP host to be able to protect against these kind of attacks, that would be wonderful. That they would get protected absolutely out of this in this case. So this the last vulnerability that I picked for the week is this Wildfly Server. This is a very popular server again. It is used by a very large number of Fortune 100 companies to be able to host their web applications. It basically ships with the JBoss server essentially, and it turns out that this session fixation can allow the attacker to exploit to connect to a server and to a vulnerable server and exploit sensitive information, extract sensitive information from the application. And it could also potentially result in a takeover. Now that I've compromised the user's creds, I can take over their account and authenticate as that particular particular user. So fortunately, our product, the Virsec Security solution, has a capability that we call VSP Web that can detect these session fixation type of issues using a CSRF capability that we have in our product. And so customers would be safe from this particular exploit or this particular vulnerability if they were to deploy the Virsec security platform. And again, there is no known vulnerability, no known exploit at this particular point in time. But obviously, someone has communicated to National Vulnerability Database that there is here's the way to exploit it, and it's been verified. So somebody does have an exploit out there, so it's just not in the public domain. So it's actively being exploited essentially. So I've also picked, one every week we'll publish at least one, a vulnerability that affects one of the security controls itself. So in this particular week, I've found that there's a vulnerability on the 40 analyzer. It has this is a very popular firewall, and it basically analyzes data collected by the Fortinet firewall, and improper neutralization of the input results in So basically, an attacker can send a cross-site scripting, payload, and it'll basically get reflected to a victim, and so they will be able to get control of the victim's machine essentially. So and be able to essentially execute unauthorized code on the victim's machine. So this this is a vulnerability that has no public exploit at this moment. And there's a patch available from FortiGuard, so I urge you to apply the FortiGuard patch. And VSP can detect VSP web if running in front of this FortiGuard analyzer could have been used to protect it. The Virsec security solution could have protected the Forti analyzer from being attacked essentially. So that's all I have for this.
Satya, the significance of a security tool being compromised?
Yes, that is a really big Swiss knife, because if I can compromise the security tool, then I pretty much that security tool is may or might as well not be there. So anything that you do going forward with that security tool is people will rely on their security tool to be absolutely safe and not open doorways into attack by themselves. In this case, what happens is that the Forti analyzer is facilitating a cross-site scripting attack on users, essentially, on its users. So who would connect to a Forti analyzer would be remote employees of the company. They would potentially have their laptops or their personal endpoint getting compromised. And then when they come back into the environment, into the IT environment, they could potentially propagate malware from their machine to adjacent machines, and including servers and also. This is how this particular vulnerability could potentially propagate in your own system. So it's in many ways the security control itself has got bypassed, because it allowed the attacker to come in and install malicious code essentially inside the network, essentially, which is the exact job that it's supposed to protect against.
Well, thank you, Satya. There's a lot to consider here. For the audience, we're going to be publishing these as blogs, and we'll also be soon building a searchable reference resource center where you can research any of these vulnerabilities. We also have demos on a number of these. We're happy to show you exactly how Virsec approaches these and how Virsec can preempt any of these vulnerabilities that we're discussing. Satya, any general advice for people? There's so many of these coming out. This seems like a good service for you to be curating and highlighting some important ones, but how should people use this information?
So, one of the things that we should be cognizant of is that there are these risk management solutions that that Virsec and its partners will be releasing soon. So there, the impact of from time to time, the solutions will actually put out, all the code that you're using in your applications, how much of a vulnerability you're carrying in that. So it'll be sort of a list of, you could use this information to sort of glean how much risk you are essentially running essentially. So by tabulating all your servers, if you have, let's say 100 servers and you have risk of, let's say something as critical as the Apache Tomcat that we talked about in the previous week. If you have servers that are extremely vulnerable, then the risk to the organization is very large. And, especially it gets blown up when there is a publicly available exploit available. So that makes it, an urgent requirement, to update your infrastructure as quickly as possible, because the bad guys don't pause. They will come as soon as they find that there is a vulnerable server that lets them do what they want to do. And so, the more critical your application, the faster you should patch.
Okay, well, thank you, Satya. Great information. And again, stay tuned for our next weekly installment. And please, you'll see links here to download the reports. And also look at our Bright Talk channel for webinars from Virsec and partners on a whole range of topics. Thank you, Satya.
Thank you, Willie.